looking at Genesis chapter 26. And where are we at now? We're looking at these patriarchs that we know so well. And last week we saw the culmination and the death of Abraham, and the emergence of the adult, mature Isaac. And so we want to look at Isaac and see what it is. And keeping in mind that one of the things that we're trying to show is that the Bible shows patterns. And it brings a new person, a new character, but it points out very similar patterns. One of the things that you'll recognize is those patterns can oftentimes be seen today, sometimes in our own life, through either our own personal experience or experience of people whom we deal with on a regular basis. And so we can get this and begin to learn to say, wow, this is what seems to be consistent in the behavior of people. How do we handle it? What do we do? And that's one of the beauties of the Bible. Plus, what we're also going to see is that each character shows forth a type or a shadow of our Messiah. Jesus said the scriptures were written about him. And so when you look at it and you go through these scriptures, you begin to recognize, wow, this is a type, or a allegory or a metaphor of the life or the work or the death or the burial of Jesus Christ. And we'll try to point that out as we come to it. With keeping in mind that there's so many in here that guaranteed that there's some that the Lord could point out that we won't even see until he points it out. And so we ask for, even with that the Spirit of God allows us to see it as necessary. All right, so let's take a quick listen to Genesis chapter 26.
Chapter 26. And there was a famine in the land beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. And the Lord appeared unto him, and said, Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Because that Abraham obeyed my voice, and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. And Isaac dwelt in Gerar. And the man of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, She is my sister. For he feared to say, She is my wife, lest, said he, the man of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. And it came to pass, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out at a window, and saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting with Rebekah his wife. And Abimelech called Isaac, and said,
Behold, of a surety she is thy wife. And how saidst thou, She is my sister?
And Isaac said unto him,
Because I said, Lest I die for her.
And Abimelech said,
What is this thou hast done unto us? One of the people might lightly have lain with thy wife, and thou shouldest have brought guiltiness upon us.
And Abimelech charged all his people, saying,
He that touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death.
Then Isaac sowed in that land, and received in the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. And the man waxed great, and went forward, and grew until he became very great. For he had possession of flocks, and possession of herds, and great store of servants, and the Philistines envied him. For all the wells which his father's servants had digged in the days of Abraham his father, the Philistines had stopped them, and filled them with earth. And Abimelech said unto Isaac,
Go from us, for thou art much mightier than we.
And Isaac departed thence, and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar, and dwelt there. And Isaac digged again the wells of water, which they had digged in the days of Abraham his father. For the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham. And he called their names after the names by which his father had called them. And Isaac's servants digged in the valley, and found there a well of springing water. And the herdmen of Gerar did strive with Isaac's herdmen, saying,
The water is ours.
And he called the name of the well Esek, because they strove with him. And they digged another well, and strove for that also. And he called the name of it Sitnah. And he removed from thence, and digged another well, and for that they strove not. And And he called the name of it Rehoboth. And he said,
For now the Lord hath made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land.
And he went up from thence to Beersheba. And the Lord appeared unto him the same night, and said, I am the God of Abraham thy father. Fear not, for I am with thee, and will bless thee. Multiply thy seed for my servant Abraham's sake. And he builded an altar there, and called upon the name of the Lord, and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants digged a well. Then Abimelech went to him from Gerar, and Ahuzath, one of his friends, and Pichol, the chief captain of his army. And Isaac said unto them,
Wherefore come ye to me, seeing ye hate me, and have sent me away from you?
And they said,
We saw certainly that the Lord was with thee. And we said, Let there be now an oath betwixt us, even betwixt us and thee, and let us make a covenant with thee, that thou wilt do us no hurt, as we have not touched thee, and as we have done unto thee nothing but good, and have sent thee away in peace. Thou art now the blessed of the Lord.
And he made them a feast, and they did eat and drink. And they rose up betimes in the morning, and sware one to another. And Isaac sent them away, and they departed from him in peace. And it came to pass the same day that Isaac's servants came, and told him concerning the well which they had digged, and said unto him,
We have found water.
And he called it Sheba. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba unto this day. And Esau was 40 years old, when he took to wife Judith the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Bashemath the daughter of Elon the Hittite, which were a grief of mind unto Isaac and to Rebekah. Chapter 26.
All right. So, we see this story of Isaac. Now, right off the bat, you're going to recognize it. We heard this before, haven't we? So, you're looking at it. It's just happening all over again. Can we learn from past experiences? But, as human beings, that's just how we are. A lot of times we can watch a friend or a cousin or a parent go through something and suffer consequences and turn around and do the same thing. Well, here we are, Isaac. He knows what happened with Abraham when he moved out of the land, and they both moved out of the land for the same reason. Okay. And at least in this particular time, God did give Isaac a bit of instruction. But let's take a look. In that first verse of the 26th chapter, it says, And there was a famine in the land, besides the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. All right. So we saw what Abraham did when there's a famine. So what's the famine? A famine means that you're not getting any water. And then you don't get no rain, the crops are not growing, you're finding it difficult to produce the things that support life. And so you're trying to find what to do. The answer to all of that, because sometimes when we're trying to find things that help with the things of making a better life, I want to be able to have good health. I want to be able to have finance. I want to be able to have an enjoyable experience as far as working or different things for receiving income. All of that is what we desire. But when that stuff dries up, what should we do? Well, the scripture tells us that we should do one thing. That's the first thing we should do is do what? Go to God. But like Abraham and now Isaac, the first thing they do is try to figure out a way to get it done. See, they have to keep in mind that if you're going through tough times, it does not mean God's not still there with you. And that's sometimes hard for us to calculate. We seem to equate being in a tough situation or in difficulty with being by myself. That's what I'm in a difficult situation because I don't got no help. Nobody's assisting me. And we can easily, as human beings, get to that state of mind. When in reality, as one that believes and trusts God, the Lord Jesus says, Lo, I'm with you what? Always. I'll never leave you nor forsake you. And so with Abraham and now even with Isaac, for them to grasp the understanding that even if you're going through a famine, God is still there. Allow God to stretch you to the point where you feel you can't deal with it anymore. Now you're going to have to do what? Give it to God. And unfortunately, that's not what we do. We don't wait for God to step in and do the unusual or the miraculous or the thing that just doesn't seem to be in our minds of thinking. We think of something and then we find out how to implement what we thought of. But let's look and see what happens here. So the famine's here. All right, just like it was in Abraham. And so Isaac went unto Abimelech, the king of the Philistines. And you can underline Philistines because we're going to see that again and again and again. And the Philistines are a very interesting group of people. It's an interesting nation in the scripture. And it's often typified as the flesh, like how our bodies are, how our flesh, our appetites, the things that we strive for that may not always be the things that God strives for. And so what we see here is a very interesting corollary, that when trouble comes or famine hits, we start moving towards the what? The flesh. We start doing, well, what's the flesh want? The flesh wants to be what? Taken care of. The flesh doesn't want to deal with no pain. The flesh doesn't want to suffer. The flesh always wants what it wants, when it wants, the way it wants. All right? And so the Philistine, throughout all scripture, is a consistent type of the flesh. And we're going to see a few other nations that follow that. But the Philistines seem to be very ubiquitous in that you see that all the way through scripture. We're going to see that through this entire Old Testament, this aspect of dealing with the Philistines. All right. But then the minute he decides to make this decision, look at verse 2. It says, and the Lord appeared unto him and said, go not down to Egypt. Now that's where Abraham went, remember? And he went down there, and then he ended up coming back with a few things, one of which was Hagar, we believe, possibly. And that caused that whole situation. But God tells him, so God appears to him in the trouble, which is important. And for us to keep in mind that when we are dealing with difficulty and trouble, God will appear. But even if he doesn't appear, we still have to do what? Wait and trust on him. We learned that lesson from Sarah, right? Because Sarah was like, well, I'm not going to wait anymore. I'm going to find something. I'm going to figure out something to do. Well, fortunately, in this situation, the Lord appears. So in that second verse, it says, and the Lord appeared unto him and said, go not down to Egypt. All right? And Egypt is always a type of sin. So don't go to the flesh to dwell in sin to try to fix your famine problem. That's basically the equation that we see here. All right, so don't go down to Egypt. Dwell in the land which I tell thee of. So he says, I'm going to tell you where to go. So it says, sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and will bless you, for unto you and unto thy seed I will give all these countries. Now look at what he just said to Isaac, just like what he said to Abraham. Keeping in mind, I'm going to give you all these countries. Now, the first thing that comes to mind with me on this is I go back to Sarah. Sarah is really important because remember, God told Abraham and Sarah that I'm going to bless you with a what? A child. But it took longer than they were anticipating it would take. Now, God just told Isaac that you look around, look at all these nations all around you. All this land is going to be what? Yours. It's not theirs now.
Right.
Well, how long? Is it going to be theirs tomorrow?
Yeah.
How about next week? Maybe next month? How about in 5-10 years? Or how about 100 years? You just got to wait because God's promise cannot not come to pass.
Right.
And so even to this day, we're living in the year 2019, and that land that God promised right here to Isaac, they still don't own all of it.
Right.
But it's going to be what? Theirs. So that lets us know that there's some prophetic aspects that's going to happen, more than likely during the time of the millennial reign, and going further, or maybe even during the tribulation. We just don't know. But I know this, that if God said it's going to be yours, guess what's going to happen?
It'll be yours.
But now what people will say is, well, maybe we need to do something okay, do what? You want to go ahead and do something like Sarah did? Try to implement it, try to make it happen? Or do you want to wait for God to show it? And I think that's the key. Can we just wait and allow God to show? So when God tells us something, oftentimes our impatience becomes our enemy because we want it now. And not only our impatience, but our unwillingness to trust God and to be ignorant of the method, but have wisdom and faith. All right, so you be ignorant of how to do it, because I don't know how to do it, but then have wisdom and knowledge because I'm putting what? Faith in God. So I have wisdom that it's going to get done. I just don't know how. But I know that God's going to do it. So that's how you can allow the flesh to be ignorant, because if the flesh knew how to do it, guess what the flesh would do? It would do it. But it doesn't know, so it's trying to figure out a way, like Sarah. Well, I don't know how God's going to do this, so I'm going to figure it out. All right? And so those are the lessons we can pull from this. That when we look at this, that we have to sometimes understand that God's trying to get us to see. But the key here, though, I think is so important, is that God comes to Isaac. And he tells him that you're going to own all this land. So don't even worry about who's living in it now, because it's going to be what? Yours. Okay? It says, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. He's letting them know, you're part of this. I swore this to Abraham, and now Abraham is gone from the natural world. You're here. You're the next link in the chain. And it's going, well, how many links is it? I don't know, but you're part of it, and the chain is always just as strong as the what? Weakest link. So Isaac, I need you to be a strong link in the chain. We're going to connect all this together until it actually happens. Verse 4, and it says, and the Lord's still speaking. And it says, and I will make thy seed. So now that same promise to Abraham is now applying to who? To Isaac. I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries. So letting them know. He's saying it again. And thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. So everyone on earth is going to be blessed by what comes from your lineage. Well, we know that's true from one more, probably the most important, not probably, the most important aspect of that is it from the loins of the Jewish people came our Messiah, came Jesus. So everybody is blessed through who? Through Jesus. All right, and so that right there is something that we can see. But then there's other aspects to it too. All right, look at verse 5. It says, because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge and my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. All right. So Abraham was obedient unto God. All right. And so, and Abraham was obedient because he what? Believed God. He believed God would do what he said he would do. Now, when we read that, it says Abraham obeyed all my voice and kept my charge and my commandments and my statutes and my law. Did Abraham do everything perfectly?
No.
He did not. So what did he do perfectly? He believed by faith to do the things that he was able to do. Even though in that belief, he still did what? Make mistakes. And I think it's important to outline and bring that to bear as well. Look at verse 6. And Isaac dwelt in Gerar. Verse 7. Let me make sure I didn't skip something here. Yeah, okay. Verse 7. And the men of that place asked him of his wife. And he said, she is my what? My sister. All right. Seen this before, haven't we? All right. Who did this before?
Abraham.
All right. So now he's following the same thing. Now, here's the thing. He just got finished having an experience with God. And God told him that I'm going to be with you and I'm going to bless you. He showed him that this whole nation, everything is going to belong to your seed. Your seed will own all these nations. And in doing all that, when he gets to Gera, he still has what? Fear. And because he's got fear, he feels he needs to do what? Tell this lie. All right. And so he says that she is my wife. All right. For he feared to say, you see that? What's that? He what? Feared. So our fear can cause us to do a lot of things that we should not do. But yet, if we were to just trust God, let God handle it. But see, the reason why he's fearing is because he's doing the calculations in his own spirit. He's thinking, well, if I do this, this is going to happen. Well, how about if you just trust God? Well, what happened then? See, that's the equation that he doesn't add here. And sadly, we don't do that a lot either. We do it, sometimes, and then sometimes we what? We don't do it. If we can learn to be consistent in like, God's going to do this. He's going to handle this. Let me not worry about it. And let me go on and see. Let me not try to tweak it myself. Because the minute I tweak it, I alter it to where it's no longer the divine way in which God wanted to bring it to happen. All right. So he feared. He feared to say, she is my wife. Lest, he said, the men of this place would what? Kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. All right. So he's worried about himself being what? Put to death. Why? Because Rebekah was beautiful. She was a very pretty woman. And I think that's one of the things that sometimes we don't give enough emphasis. So there's nothing wrong with trying to look your best. Right. Trying to do what you can do. God's not against beauty. He's not against good looking. He's not against things being well kept. He's not against that. And yet, but at the same time, if you got something that's nice, you don't want to do what's wrong to try to protect what's nice. So he has a nice wife, and he's doing wrong trying to protect his own skin because of what he feels going to happen if he says, this is my sister. They're going to kill me. Well, his ability to have that is like some people can't handle certain things. There's some people you can't turn around and give some people $1 million. Because there's some people you give $1 million to, you visit them in 1 year, and they're back to where they were before. Absolutely. There's a lot of people like that. You just can't give it to them. Right. There's some people you can't make them famous with people, because turn around they're going to misuse all that. And so we can name all kinds of different traits and abilities that different people sometimes have that certain people can't handle. And learning how to handle the good is an important aspect of developing when you're trusting the Lord, because the Lord can help you. If the Lord blesses you with something wonderful, okay, now are you going to handle that? Are you going to be able to put a God-like thinking into the processes of handling this enormous blessing? Or are you going to just go to the flesh, go to the Philistine side of life and just spend it all? Just use it all for just your own selfish needs and desires without learning how to develop it, use it to help others. There's a lot to that whole aspect. And so what Isaac is doing, he's thinking about his own what? My own self. All right, but let's keep going. Verse 8. And it came to pass, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, looked out the window and saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting with Rebekah, his wife. So Isaac, they're out there, playing and necking and kissing, something like that. And he's beginning to recognize, wait a minute, this ain't they ain't brother and sister, they husband and wife. All right, so when you try to hide that like that, God makes sure that something like this happens, where your whole thing that you're trying to do gets exposed. And so while he happened to look out the window, and he saw what was going on. And Abimelech, he's the king. He's no dummy. He put two and two together. And Abimelech called Isaac and said, behold, of a surety she is thy wife. And how sayest thou, she is my sister? So why did you say this? Why did you do this? I've seen it with my own eyes. So Isaac confesses. He doesn't get deeper into the problem. He just goes ahead and tells the truth. And that's one of the things that's important too. When you're trying to be slick and you get caught, you know what you should do?
Tell the truth.
I was trying to be slick. Move on. All right. But some people, they try to get slick and they get caught and they just dig deeper lies. Just keep lying more and lying more. And now because all the lies doing is digging the hole deeper. And you're going to dig it deeper to where you're never going to come out.
Right.
You got one little lie. I ain't going to call it a little lie. You got one lie. It done dug you a hole. But if you get right now, you can't climb out of that. But you keep telling more and more lies, you're going to be too deep to get out.
Right.
All right. But I'll give Isaac the credit here. So he said, okay, all right, let me confess with this. And so King Abimelech looked, we did that, verse 9. So Abimelech called Isaac and said, behold, of a surety she is thy wife. And how sayest thou, she is my sister? And Isaac said unto him, because I said, lest I die for her. Now, that's an interesting thing. He did not want to die for her. Now, we can go back and see, where have we seen this before? Well, we already talked about, we saw with Abraham. But we also saw something like this with Adam. Because you remember when Eve was deceived by the serpent and she ate. And she knew, she believed. Adam knew what was going to happen. The interesting thing is that Adam didn't say, ooh, you ate of that apple. You in trouble. And he was like, and I say apple, because we just say fruit. We don't know what it was. But he was like, I'm not eating. You in trouble. But he did the opposite of what Abraham and Isaac did. He's like, you have been given to me. If you are in trouble, I might lose you. So he ate of it to stay with what? Stay with her. And so, but that's why he's called the first Adam. The second Adam, Jesus, did the same thing, because the body of believers is often typed as the bride of Christ. And so here Isaac said that he told us lie because he said, lest I die for her. He didn't want to die for her. But Jesus died for what? His bride. The beautiful aspect of it is that he died not knowing any sin. And if you die but have not sinned, death cannot what? Hold you. And so death couldn't hold him because death is the wages of sin. The wages of sin is death. So if you die but have no sin, you ain't supposed to get paid that. That's not something you're supposed to be having to deal with. So that's why Jesus was able to rise. So Jesus died for us. Unlike Isaac, who did not want to die for his wife. Right? So it's a nice little corollary. Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's just like when we go back to the beginning and where Adam and Eve, they hid. And for some reason, I just kept saying to myself, if you had just stepped out, like you said, and said, I made a mistake. Mm-hmm. I didn't know. Mm-hmm. Because I keep looking back at, he didn't ask where she got the fruit from. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, right. I mean, but I was explaining this to my sister, and she didn't really understand what I was saying, and I said, okay, it'll happen. Mm-hmm. So she had made some. She said, here, honey, taste this. Mm-hmm. To her husband. Mm-hmm. He didn't ask where you got it from. He tasted it. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. I said, Barbara, that's what I'm talking about. See, you're not going to ask your wife, where'd you get that from? Mm-hmm. You're not going to say, what store did you go and buy? You're not going to ask all them questions. You're just going to eat something that your wife is giving you because you feel in your heart it's okay. Mm-hmm. And that's why I would say he didn't ask the questions.
Right.
But now once he found out, instead of him coming and saying, oh, Lord, I made a mistake, I look, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in.
May not be. May not be. But the thing is,
They was afraid.
yeah, Adam, and you always got to keep in mind that Adam was different than how we are today. And there's his knowledge. Remember, he went and named all the animals and everything. And so you almost have the way the scripture paints it is that he looked at it and was like, I know where you got this. But instead of reprimanding her, he ate anyway. Now, the New Testament writer says that Adam was not deceived. Eve was deceived. So out of Adam's desire to not want to, I don't know what's going to happen. If he had at that point, I know where you got this from. Now I'm gonna go to God now. Before I do what?
Eat.
Before I eat. Would things have been different? I don't know. Could be, maybe. But at that point, when you look at it and you go, look, I done named every animal on this planet. I know every tree, every fruit, every blade of grass, because God gave that to me.
Right.
He had that kind of wisdom and knowledge. He wasn't just a natural man. He had other spiritual aspects, and that's the part that died when he ate. And he could have been like, all right, I'm going to God right now, but he didn't. And but that's if I would have, could have. We don't know what would have changed, but we know what happened. What he ate.
He ate.
All right. So here, Isaac's telling the truth, but he's telling the truth. But sometimes people can tell you the truth, and even though they're telling you the truth, you're still not impressed by it.
Right.
Well, why did you tell a lie? Because I didn't want to die for her. Well, all right. Number one, I'm not impressed that you lied, and I'm not impressed for why you lied. You didn't want to You didn't want to. I think if you're a husband and your wife is in danger, you will risk your life to save your wife.
You should.
Exactly. Well, he ain't trying to do that. All right, verse 10. And Abimelech said, what is this thou hast done unto us? And Abimelech, being the king, having wisdom, knows that this is a problem. One of the people might lightly have lain with your wife, and thou should have brought guilt unto us. So Abimelech is recognizing you could have brought all kinds of problems on our nation, not knowing that problems are going to come in his nation anyway. But at least he recognizes it. And so at this particular time, God blesses him, though his nation down the road will be a problem. And Abimelech charged all his people. He stepped up as the king and said, he that touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. So now the fear that Isaac had about him being put to death so that somebody can have his wife, Abimelech the king's like, you better not touch this man nor his wife, because if you do that, you're going to be put to death. So in a sense, if he had just told the truth, God might have already let this happen, where the king would have been, God would have put favor in the heart of the king to protect him. That's what ended up happening anyway. All right. Verse 12. Then Isaac sowed in that land and received in the same year 100-fold. Now, look at this. When we opened this chapter, we were dealing with a what? A famine. Now look at what's happening. He sowed what? Seed in that land, and now he's getting 100-fold. So that means if you sowed 1 ear of corn, you got 10. I mean, you got 100. You sold, one fruit, now you got 100. 100-fold. All right. So that means that God has what? Blessed him. It says, and God and the Lord blessed him. Well, certainly when you sow in 100-fold, you are blessed. It says, and the man waxed great. That means that his blessings made him what? Wealthy, popular, made him, highly esteemed amongst other people, because you are doing things that are extremely successful. All right. He waxed great and went forth and grew until he became very great. He's just continuing to do good. Look at what God is doing after he confessed and started doing the right thing. Look at what God's doing. it's amazing how things start improving once you get into the right system. Like you was talking, you get into the right system, things start to improve. They're starting to, and you can see the progress.
Right.
You know. All right, and so verse 14, and he had possessions of flocks. Well, how can you have so many flocks? Because you got grain to feed them. So you can have if somebody gives you 100 sheep and you got no food to feed them, well, they're gonna die. You gotta have the wherewithal of the grains and of all the things that you're sowing in the fields to be able to have the flock. So now that he's got sold the fruits and he's got 100-fold of that, now he can have flocks and possession of herds and great stores of servants. Well, why do you got servants? Because I need somebody to help what? Watch over all the flocks, all the sheep and the cows and the goats, and you know, and they can now. So he's basically now employing other people. All right, so God's blessing him, and he's being able to bless other people. And the Philistines envied him. But see, I told you the Philistines are a type of the what? The flesh. So you're always going to see flesh-like stuff coming out of the Philistines. And one of the things that the flesh always have is what? Envy. All right. I think I used that analogy once before. If somebody was to walk in here, or if Warren Buffett was to walk in here and throw $1 million in here, and when he just happened to throw it, and he says, all you grab, everything you touch, you get to keep. And just happened to throw it, most of it landed by where Mary is, and she grabbed it, and she picks up, 700,000. And then another piece of it hit, and you pick up 200,000. And then the rest, is left for me. Now, when it's all said and done, we came here with nothing, but we're going to leave with a couple 100,000. But no, most people are going to be upset with Mary because she got the most. So wait a minute. Now, why can't we split this even? Well, the man said when he threw the money in, all you take, that's what you keep. So because she got that money, now what's going to happen? Instead of you just be like, I went out today and I'm coming home with something. But no, we're going to have what? Envy.
Right. Probably mad with her.
Right. Because even though I got something, she still got more than me.
She got more than me.
That's what envy does. Instead of appreciating what you got.
Yep.
And that's what the Philistines are. Now, Isaac is blessing, because the blessings that he's having, the Philistines get to experience some of that. It's just not all of it. And they now are envying him. He's being blessed by who? By God. And so some people can't take it when they see other people do well. Because they're thinking, oh, no, that should be me.
Yeah.
You know? And it's amazing how envy can just creep right on in there.
Co-workers are too.
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's look at it. 15. For all the wells which his father's servant had dug in the days of Abraham, his father, the Philistines had stopped them and filled them with earth. So they so envious that they said, well, now I'm going to try to do something to slow down your blessing. I want to now try to hurt you, hinder you. That's what envy does. See, it ain't just that envy, well, I just feel a certain way. Envy now makes you start doing stuff. You start saying the wrong things and doing the wrong things. And that's what happens here. So now the Philistines are going out, they're starting to fill up. They're trying to stop the blessing. But let me tell you something. When God starts blessing you, people can't stop it. I don't care what they do. Look at what he says here. It's verse 16. It says, and Abimelech said unto Isaac, go from us. All right. Now we're going to revisit this whole go from us in just a little bit. But he said, go from us, for thou art much mightier than we. So he's like, we see how well you're doing. And instead of them trying to just enjoy the blessings and share and watching how God blesses them and maybe they can learn and deal with that as well, they said, no, get out of here. They're throwing them out. We don't want you around here. And that's one of the things that the flesh will do. The flesh doesn't want the blessings of God. The flesh wants its own thing. All right? Because the blessings of God come from a spiritual aspect, not a fleshly aspect. We walk by faith, not by sight. The flesh is natural and carnal, but the spirit is spiritual. 17. And Isaac departed thence and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar. So he leaves and he starts moving towards the valley of Gerar, and he dwelt there. And Isaac dug wells again of water, which he had dug in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham, and he called their names after the names by which his father had called them. And Isaac's servants dug the well in the valleys and found there a well of spring. And the herdsmen of Gerar did strive with Isaac. So now here we go again. All right, so I'm watching you dig a well and you find water, but we didn't find it. And so we go, well, this is our land. You dug it, but it's, they're debating as to who it belongs to. And so what happens? So now they're under a situation now, because why are they doing this? Once again, envy. I want what you got. I'm not happy that I have some goodness. I want what? All of it.
All of it.
Right? And that's we call that what? Selfishness, right? And so now they're striving. It says, and they say to the herdsmen, saying, the water is ours. All right, so they're saying it belongs to us. And he called the name of the well Esek, because they strove with him. All right, so it says, and then they dug another well. So they said, okay, well we'll let you have that. Now you think they'd be happy? We got that well. So they move on. They dig another well, and they strove for that also. And he called the name of that Shitna. So now here he is at this other well, and this other well that they have named, and they're striving for it. It says in verse 22, and he removed from thence and dug another well, and for that they strove not. So now they finally get to a point where they're like, all right, we can't keep chasing this guy all over the desert, trying to find reasons to convince him that well belongs to us. Now we're starting to look a little silly. So they don't strive for this one. And he called that name, the name of that Rehoboth. So he called it Rehoboth because he said, now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. It says, and he went up thence from thence to Beersheba. And the Lord appeared to him in the same night. So he went from that land, he ended up in the land called Beersheba. And it says, and the Lord appeared to him that same night. Now, what's important about this is that it lets us know, remember, God, in verse 2 and 3, God appeared to Isaac. And he told him some things. He says that I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to give you this land, and all that, he says. And then in between that, we see all this stuff happening with him dealing with, him going to this other place and telling these folks that this woman is my sister and when she's really my wife. And now we have all this strife and everything. But now through all of this, one of the things that we can recognize is what? God never left him.
Right.
God's still with you. In your difficulties and in your struggles and in your heartaches and when you're feeling bad or sad or difficult and the tears come, that doesn't mean God's not with you. He sees you. He understands. Through all the heartache and the disappointment and the frustration and the loneliness and the hard work, God is there. All right, and we have to try to remember that. But he says in the 24th verse, and the Lord appeared unto him that same night and said, I am the God of Abraham, thy father. Fear not. So first thing, I want you to know who I am. I'm the God that Abraham dealt with. And because God comes to him and how that majestic aspect of him showing his presence to Isaac is, one of the things that he tells him is what? Fear not. For I am with thee. What did he say? I'm what? With thee. And will bless thee. Look at that. You see? So he never left. He's always there. I'm with you. And I will bless you. Now, oftentimes we think blessing as that means I won't have any difficulty. That's not what blessing means. Blessing means that you're going to be under the observance and the care of God. All right? But difficulty can always be part of the equation. I will bless thee and multiply thy seed for thy servant Abraham's sake. So you're going to have you're going to be part of the link in this chain of greatness that's going to come out of your loins. Because I promise this not only to Abraham, but now I'm promising this to you. Verse 25, and he built an altar there and called upon the name of the Lord. Now I find that this again is important. Why did Isaac build this altar? Because he's trying to what? To remember that God visited me here. This is where God visited me. And we should do that too. We need to build altars in our heart, in our mind, in our spirit, in our thinking of times when I know God gave me this. Or I know God did this for me. Now, when that happens, you need to take a moment and take that time and build an altar unto God. So that when the difficult times come, when you don't feel like God's with you, right? Then you can go back to your altar and be like, well, wait a minute. No, God was with me here. And the more altars you can build under God, the more you can recognize that God has been with me here. And then you skip a few times, you go, oh, and then he was with me here. And then you begin to recognize, well, if he was with me all through this, he must have always have been there. Yeah. It's just that these particular times are times when I can naturally or emotionally or mentally notice it. Mm-hmm. But because I don't notice it doesn't mean he's not what? He's not there. Right? And so those are things just to keep in mind. Sometimes things are out of our sight. When Miss Penny takes the kids into the other room to study, they are what? Out of our sight. We don't see them. But that don't mean they're not here.
Right.
They're here. We just don't see them. But then at a certain time, they're going to be like, oh, they're going to come up. Here they go. Well, that's not how it is with God. God will allow you to perceive him. And when you do that, remember it. Hold on to it. Because there are going to be times when you don't perceive him. But don't think he's not there. He is. And that's an important matter. I can't emphasize that enough. All right? And so it says, he built an altar unto the Lord God. All right? It says, and he called upon the name of the Lord and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servant dug a well. So they dug another well. And then Abimelech went to him from Gerar, and Ahuzzath, one of the friends of Pico, the chief captain of his army, and Isaac said unto them, wherefore come ye to me? So Abimelech, where he left, remember Abimelech told him, you're too mighty, what? Leave. Right? That's what Abimelech said. And so now when they see that he's doing really, really well where he is, now Abimelech's coming. Oh, what is he coming for? Let's just keep reading, see what he says. And Isaac said unto him, wherefore come ye unto me, seeing ye hate me? Look what he said. You threw me out of the country. You told me to get out because you were envious of me, and have sent me away from you. And they said, we saw certainly that the Lord was with thee. Look at that. So they're saying, we've been watching you. Even though we threw you out, we've been keeping an eye on you. And that's what people, when you come to the Lord and you start dealing with God, the people you interact with on a regular basis, they're watching you. They're seeing how, if you're making changes, they're noticing it. This person is, he's doing better. His attitude is different. Things have changed for the better. And so Abimelech, he sees this, and he says, God is with you. And so now Abimelech is worried because Abimelech is always trying to take care of what? Himself. Because that Philistine aspect is what? A type of the flesh. So he's now looking at this and he's going, well, we better make friends with him because we don't want to become a problem. Look what he says. And we said, let therefore be now an oath betwixt us. So he wants to make a covenant. an oath betwixt us, and even betwixt us and thee, and let us make a covenant with thee, that thou wilt do us no hurt, as we have not touched thee, and as we have not done unto thee but good, and have sent thee away in peace. Now you told him to get out because you were envious of him. You didn't tell him to get out because everything was peaceful. You told him to get out because you were fearful that they may take what you got. It says, now thou art blessed of the Lord, and he made them a feast. So Isaac said, okay, I'll make you a feast. But here's the thing to keep in mind. What Abimelech is trying to do, remember, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, he is a type of the what? Flesh. The flesh is trying to make a covenant with the what? With the spirit. It's trying to, and you always got to watch out when the flesh is trying to make a what? A covenant. All right? That's something you're going to be aware of. All right. Let's finish this up. We're just about done here.
I have to go.
All
My
right.
husband.
Okay.
See you next time.
Okay. Y'all get home safely.
Yeah. The first is at the memorial.
Memorial Park. Right.
Bring a friend.
Yeah. Bring somebody.
I'm trying to see if my sister will come back up. Okay.
All right.
Come on, Leah.
All right. We'll see ya. Okay. We're gonna finish this one. All right. So.
Yeah, that's not right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now Abimelech, king of the Philistines in that area, he's making a. He says we got to make a covenant. We got to get some agreement here. But keeping in mind, that's just part of what the flesh does. The flesh is always trying to, it's like if you on the winning side, the flesh wants to say, well, I'm gonna stay where I'm at. But you on the losing side, first thing the flesh is trying to do, like, I need to get out of this side and get on the other side. Because once again, he threw him out because of what? Envy. All right? You seem to be doing good, and you're doing good in our land. Well, we need you to leave. And we'll figure out how to continue what you're doing in our land. But when he left, and guess what happened? What left with him? All the blessings.
Right.
So they recognized that wherever Isaac went, that the blessing happened where he was. And so Abimelech is recognizing, well, now we can try to duplicate what Isaac was doing while he was in our land, and that probably wasn't happening, which is why he kept watching everywhere he go. And we know that they were watching because when he went out and he dug the well, guess what happened? They came and tried to do what? Claim the well. And that happened twice. And they said, wow. So every time he was digging in our land, he was finding stuff. He was sowing seed and it was growing 100-fold. So we threw him out. So we can grow it in our own land. But maybe when they're growing now, they're planting seed, it ain't coming up 100-fold. Right. Because the blessing was given and promised to who?
Isaac.
To Isaac. So when Isaac left, why? Because they threw him out? Why? Because they envied him. Now they're recognizing, look, it must have something to do with you. So we better find a way to get some peace. That's what flesh does. Abimelech is not trying to know God. Abimelech ain't trying to get to know who you serve. He don't want to get to know the God of Abraham and Isaac. All he recognizes is that you got money, so to speak. You got blessings.
Right.
And I want to be all right with that. And I don't want to be fighting with you because it costs money to fight. It costs effort to fight. Can we just find an agreement here so we can continue to live good? Well, see, the flesh is not always unreasonable. The flesh is not always unreasonable. That's reasonable thing to say. But the flesh is always selfish.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So Abimelech is fulfilling that type. The flesh sometimes wants some things, and sometimes you be like, okay, I'm gonna give it to you. It's like sometimes like I'm always trying to eat right. But sometimes the flesh be like, don't you want this and you want that? And I'm like, no. But then I say, okay, all right. On today, I'm gonna give you you're gonna eat the 4 cookies. You're gonna eat the cupcakes. I'm gonna allow you to do. But that's just for what? Today, because we're gonna go back on the. So every now and then you got to do this. You got to be like, all right, because why? This is the world we live in. our flesh is going to be the flesh. We can't turn the flesh into spirit. We just can't do it. The flesh is always want the things of the flesh. So the flesh follows Isaac, been watching him, and now says, let's make an agreement. All right. And so what happens is that Isaac makes the agreement. Verse 30 says, and he made a feast, and they did eat and drink. Well, that's what the flesh wants. Flesh wants that feast. The flesh wants that food. The flesh wants that drink. And they arose up betime in the morning and swore one to another. And Isaac sent them away, and they departed from him in peace. So now they're departing again, but this time the departure is a little different. The first time they departed was because Abimelech said, get out. It's interesting, we're going to see this get out of my land again. We're going to see this with who? With Egypt. So he's in the land of the flesh, and he was told to get out. Later on in the next book in Exodus, we're going to see him in the land of sin, and they're going to be told to what? To get out. But both of those get outs are things that we should do. We need to learn how to get out of the flesh, and we need to learn how to get out of sin. So leaving those two metaphorical nations is part of what our experience is going to be. We're going to learn how to get out of the flesh, but the flesh is, as long as we live in, the flesh is always going to be what? Part of what we deal with. So when we get out of the flesh, a couple of days later, guess what's going to be right there next to us again? The flesh. And so Isaac left, but then guess who showed up? The flesh. Abimelech and the Philistines are right there. And those are good lessons for us when we look at how this thing points out and the metaphorical aspects of how we deal with it. It helps us to get a clearer view of you. I get a better look at me. And then when you're dealing with other people, you begin to recognize, why do people act a certain way? Well, sin and the flesh. Sin in the flesh. It's why people do things. It's why even you have your ups and your downs. All right, finishing this up. And it came to pass on the same day that Isaac's servants came and told him concerning the wells which they had dug, and said unto him, we have found water. All right. And so they found water, and I find that interesting. Water is always typifying the aspect of cleansing, washing, and being able to be. And so now they're getting ready to get washed. All right, and he called it Shebath. Therefore, the name of that city is Beersheba unto this day. We're going to see that name again going forward. All right, and then it brings forth another aspect and kind of closes with that, and then introduces us to what's going on with Esau. All right, and Esau is the brother of Isaac. All right, and Esau was 40 years old when he took a wife. So now, Esau, as I said, brother Isaac, the brother of Jacob. Esau is now at the age where he's getting ready to get married. We know that when Esau was born, he was born first. Jacob was born second. But Jacob was told by God to Rebekah that he would be the one that God would use, and Esau would serve him. We also remember that when Esau was born, Jacob did what? Reached up and grabbed his heel, right? And that's why he was called Jacob, or what? Or heel catcher. All right. And so, so now the first of Isaac's children, Esau, is taking a wife. The wife's name is Judith, the daughter of Beeri, a Hittite. Once again, remember God said you're going to have all these lands? Well, here's another. We saw the Philistines. Now we're going to see these Hittites. We're going to see Hittites again. But Esau married a Hittite. All right. So now he decided to marry this. Before, with Abraham, when Isaac was looking for a bride, Abraham made sure, don't let my son marry the women of around here. Go back. He sent the servant back into his hometown to find a wife. All right, but Esau did different. Isaac didn't make him for whatever reason. We don't get the backstory to that, but we just find out that he married Judith, the daughter of a Hittite, and it says the daughter of him, and Basemath, the daughter of Elam the Hittite. So the two wives that he has, Judith and Basemath. All right, so he's got two wives. Both of them are what? Hittites. Right, and that's going to be an issue down the road. Final verse says, which were a grief of mine to Isaac and Rebekah. What does that mean? Isaac, his mom and his dad did not like the fact that you married these two Hittite women. Okay. Now, we're going to see this again. You know who this puts me in mind of? We've got a ways to get there when we get to the book, the Judges. But Samson. Samson's going to be attracted to the carnal woman. Right? Why? Because Samson and his being blessed is a type of the flesh. What we're looking at here is Abimelech and Philistine. We say Philistine is a type of the what? The flesh. And Esau marries in that land once again because he's marrying what his flesh sees, what his flesh likes. All right, and so we'll see how that builds again. But all this is told to us. The New Testament tells us that everything that was written in the Old Testament was for our example. So what do we learn from this? You're going to be dealing with the flesh. The flesh is always envious. The flesh is always trying to chase after what it wants and not after the things that God wants. When the flesh is not being appeased to, the flesh is frustrated. The flesh is ornery. The flesh is mad. But the flesh will recognize when the spirit's being blessed, and the flesh will join in with the spirit. Not because the flesh loves God.
Right.
The flesh loves what God can give you. So therefore, you got to keep that in mind. So sometimes the flesh will agree with your spirit because the spirit is bringing forth the blessings of God. But that don't mean that the flesh is still not the what? The flesh.
Right.
The flesh is always going to be the flesh, whether it agrees with you or not. Whether your spirit and the flesh seem to go along, the flesh will not change, which is why our flesh has to what? Die. All right? And then we're going to be raised up new in Christ. All right, so we're going to stop there. Any other comments or questions? I think this is kind of interesting when you see how this works and the beauty of the typology that we see here.